Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Education, the series dedicated to topics and issues affecting Asian American Pacific Islander, brought to you by the Asian Community Development Council right here in Las Vegas. My name is Patranya Bhoolsuwan, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that I think is really relevant and important right now that a lot of people are talking about, and I think it needs to be talked about, this conversation about the rise in attacks against Asian Americans, particularly older Asian Americans across the US. And we've seen a spate of them, a number of about 20 in the last few weeks. So it's been really disturbing. And this trend is something that we need to raise awareness and talk more about and ask why this is happening in the first place. So today we're bringing in two special guests on this education series. I have Bobby Macabagdal. He is with the Las Vegas Asian Journal here in the city of Las Vegas, and also Frank Irigon. He is the OCA Asian Pacific American Advocates, Greater Seattle chapter, and AAPI advocate for decades. He's been a big part of the Asian American community in the Pacific Northwest. So Bobby and Frank, thank you so much for being here with me today on the series. Thank you for being here to talking about this issue. So let me start with you, Frank. You've been active in the Asian American community for so long in activism as well, and you're an activist. And there have been so many issues over the years, but just with what's been happening in the last few weeks, what's been your reaction seeing all these reports of rising attacks against Asian Americans?
Thank you, Patranya. These attacks on our Asian community, particularly our elders, it's nothing new. It's been going on for many years, ever since I've been involved with the community. From state-sanctioned violence, such as the gentrification of the International District Chinatown in Seattle, displacing Asian elderly from their homes, providing them with no accessibility to healthcare. Yeah, and now and even back then we had assaults on Asian elderly and Asian Americans in general. So what's happening now is nothing new.
So it's been happening, and I know that we've seen, according to, since last year with the pandemic, of course, with all the, China virus, that term, that whole discrimination against Asian Americans, I've covered it when I was living and working in Seattle, all these racist attacks against Asian Americans. So that happened then, and now with this kind of what seems like senseless, it seems like there are many reasons. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But Bobby, you work here and live here in Las Vegas. You've seen those attacks here and discrimination against the Asian community here as well, right?
Yes, there's been quite a few incidents where sometimes, because from what we gather, when I was involved with the local Metro Police Department here and the FBI, because what's happening is basically it started. This was in the mid 2000s, maybe, when they would, what we would find out is people, they would think that the Asian business owners are easy to target. They don't report the crimes, so they became more victims to violence because they were afraid to speak and they were afraid to talk to somebody. So that's why Metro Police Department has a twice a year meeting with the prominent leaders of the AAPI community, due to the fact that, hey, address your issue. They're telling the active leaders to say, hey, tell these people there's nothing wrong if you report the crime. If you see anything happening within let's say the shopping complexes, because a lot of these businesses many are still cash only businesses. So it's a target rich environment. So people would pick on these neighborhoods and this community. So it's sad to say that they do think of the Asian businesses or Asian people as an easy target.
Yeah, and it's just so disturbing. And I think we have some headlines that we want to show, just a few of what's been happening out there. We have that 84-year-old Thai immigrant, in the San Francisco Bay Area, who was attacked, I think, a month ago, and he died. Mr. Visha Ratanapakdi, a Vietnamese grandmother who was assaulted and robbed in San Jose. A Filipino man who was just, I think, this past week, slashed with a box cutter on a New York City subway. So you can see that article right there. So more than about 20 violent attacks since January. This is a Filipino woman who was hurt in what seemed to be unprovoked attack. And this is another one, this one actually in Queens, where this story got a lot of attention because it was a mother of a friend of a famous actress, Olivia Munn. So Olivia Munn went on social media and really got a lot of attention for that particular story. And, we've seen actually in the past few weeks, a lot of Asian American influencers and celebrities coming out, and seemingly that's helping to get the word out more. So, the question now is, are we seeing enough news coverage by major outlets? I mean, to get the story out. I'm seeing more of it, but what needs to happen? Frank, what's your take on this? I mean, what does it take to get this, for people to see that this is really an important story and people need to pay attention to this?
Well, that's one reason why we started publishing our own newspaper, the Asian Family Fair, back in '72. It was because there was a lack of coverage of Asian American news in Seattle and King County. And after we finished publishing, around the same time, the Asian International Examiner came about, as well as the Northwest Asian Weekly. But our community needs to publish more of our own newspapers, also in our own language, such as the Vietnamese have been doing with Dat Moi, and the Chinese through the Northwest Asian Weekly. But there needs to be done, and particularly in the press. In fact, I'm glad you asked me that question. I was watching the Today Show, and they had a segment on hate crimes on Asians, but it was like, we'll say, maybe a minute segment. Then they went into braiding hair of African-American kids, and that was maybe 2-3 minutes. And then they had other segments on what was happening. Granted, this is Black History Month. But, if you're going to do something on Asian hate crimes, and then focus on it and give us more than just a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. And you brought up a good point with it, having to be able to reach different populations, especially the Asian American population, right? We're not a monolith. We're different groups, right? Asian Americans are just Filipino Americans, Vietnamese Americans, Chinese Americans. We come from different groups, and there are different needs. I think sometimes it's people clump us together and see it as one. I think that's part of the issue too. So.
Well, that's why we told the police here, you needed to hire an outreach worker, as well as recruit more police officers that are culturally and language accessible. They just can't leave it to us to police our own selves. They're the ones who are supposed to police us.
Right. Yeah. And I know, and Bobby, Metro has works with the Asian American community in that way, right? In order to hopefully reach our community and people who can speak different languages in the Asian American community.
Yes, they are. And they're trying to have a more diverse recruitment where they want to target the AAPI community. In fact, a friend of mine she was part of that recruitment, and then she's AAPI, and it's still not enough, but you can see more and more AAPIs in the local police department. And right now in the Spring Valley Command, that is the area where it encompasses Chinatown, or where the predominantly Asian businesses are. That's the one I was talking to earlier about, where the Metro is actively reaching out to that community, where they would actually walk into businesses, or they would do like those, they would bring their cars and their commanders, their sergeants, and they would be in the parking lot of one major area like the Chinatown district, and it would say, hey, you can approach us, don't be afraid to talk to the police type deal.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting, and I think better kind of outreach to the community is good. But the other thing is to kind of really address what's at issue here with the way that people perceive the Asian American community. Maybe Frank can talk to this a little bit. There's been conversation about this model minority myth, right? Asian Americans being that successful ethnic minority, and any kind of racism or attacks against them aren't real, or just don't seem like it could be happening. Can you talk a little bit about that, Frank, and kind of what people think about that, and maybe when African Americans, for example, cases where they attack Asian Americans, maybe not taking us seriously? I think we've talked about this before.
Oh yes, Franz Fanon, a psychiatrist, from Mauritania, spoke about black on black crime. And here it's black on Asian crime. It's because the way they perceive it, the assailant, usually a black person, nothing's going to happen to him or her because they're attacking a person of color, unlike attacking a white person, where the full force of the law will go against them. So Asians are an easier target as far as they're concerned. And this is what always ticked us off here in Seattle and King County. I remember the late Guy Carosi was black belt karate. He took it upon himself to patrol Beacon Hill because Asian elderly there was being attacked by blacks. And the police would do nothing about it. I mean, they wouldn't even patrol the area. And so he would make sure that when they got off the bus, he would at least follow them from a distance to make sure they were safe. And here in Chinatown at night, we have a night watch now, and you see other cities with a Chinatown doing the same, in order to protect their businesses as well as the people that live there or work there. Yeah, this has been an ongoing thing. The only way we're going to break this type of stereotype is to make sure that we fight back.
Yeah. What do you see as a solution, Frank? I mean, you've been on this for so long and, talking out and speaking out about this. What can we do better as a community to really, aside from, bringing awareness and raising awareness and showing people that this is an issue? What else can we do, you think, as a community to make this problem go away?
Well, what we've done in Seattle is, one, we do have our own community newspapers, which we use. Also, we have a state Washington, Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs as well, to publicize these issues, as well as getting elected officials of Asian, descent in the state legislature to highlight this. But we also make sure that we have power. We have met with the Seattle Police Department. We finally got our first Asian on the command staff, Steve Herjak. Prior to that, we had to wait almost over a decade, I believe, to get someone on the command staff. Also, we've been pressing the police department. Like at one time, Chinatown was split into two districts. One was Little Saigon, and the other one's Chinatown International District. We got them to unite both districts, so now it's easier for them to police it as one precinct rather than two. But there's a lot of things that our communities can do nationally. And one is to act together in concert, to make sure that our voices are heard, even if it means marching on City Hall or King County. We did that with the King County Sheriff here. And she, in turn, at first hired an African-American to do outreach, but after a while, that really ticked us off. She then hired an Asian Pacific Islander, a Filipino-American, to help us out.
Yeah. And I think Bobby is doing a great job with the Asian Journal. Talk to us, Bobby, about the process within your newspaper to make sure you get these stories out, that this is what's happening. You've been posting us on social media almost daily. It's almost, you said it's disturbing to you, like putting this out and kind of heartbreaking, right? Because this is personal for all of us. It's not just a news story. It can affect all of us personally as well.
Yes, because we have an office in Los Angeles, Northern California, and now in San Diego, here in Las Vegas, in New York, and New Jersey, predominantly Asian/Filipino markets, where we've been writing about. We just wrote about. You posted it earlier. The man in New York, where his it's the trend is, as Frank said, easy target, and that's the sad part and that's the problem is, like, we can't have somebody watching our grandparents or an elderly person, shadowing them everywhere we go. That's the problem, is how do we say, hey, these are not weak targets, or you shouldn't have to target these people. But with the lack of community policing, that luckily the good thing is, like, there are CCTVs or security cameras capturing all these crimes, but it's after the fact. So I don't know how to suggest to the police or to everybody else how do we get these people from getting attacked, or not seeing them as being vulnerable, because they're, as you said, they're Asian stereotypes. They carry cash. They always have that, because, like, I've had business friends in the businesses who, as I said earlier, cash only. So they're very careful now when they're closing up their shop at night. So, or they have somebody leave earlier with it. So we got to have all these businesses and all these people. Maybe we can tell them, hey, do the buddy system. Like, like, you guys, if you guys are in one shopping center, support each other, or hire a security guard for that fact. Or like ask, like what we did with Metro, when there was a rash of robberies in Chinatown, they actually had a sting operation. They caught all the people robbing the cars, or like robbing the people in the parking lot. So you really have to ask for help, or get on top of the
Yeah,
police
and
department.
it's comforting to see that, the community there seems to be a sense of awareness, a little bit more as more people are talking about this. And you're mentioning the escort, the reason I think in San Diego, in the Bay Area, where people are younger people coming out to escort the elderly. But I think these are like short-term solutions, right? We got to think long-term. That's one of the, people are volunteering to escort older Asian Americans, which I think is really comforting and good to see. But how do we create that's kind of a long-term solution to, because this, as Frank said, has been going on for so long and been so many reasons behind it, whether it's from, xenophobic, from the pandemic, from the China virus, to all kinds of discriminations. But how do we change perceptions? And I think people working in the media can really do that in terms of being more aware, right, being more mindful in the language they use, and the kind of images and visuals they use on screen, because that affects perceptions of people who may not be familiar with the Asian American community. Maybe they've never been to Chinatown. Maybe they don't have friends or family who are Asian American. So for them, we're not someone that they see every day, right? So I think bringing awareness, whether through hopefully through more major outlets and mainstream outlets, and not just minority, or ethnic minority outlet. Frank, what else can we do moving forward? I know you've been, a big part of the Seattle community, which you've seen lots of incidents happening there too. But, aside from just kind of raising more awareness about this through the media.
Well, again, it's going back to our young folks, I really do admire the way they do a lot of community organizing in regards to what's happening with hate crimes and against gentrification. What I like of what they're doing is they're doing it with the community. Now, when I was involved back in the 60s, 70s, we did it for the community, which is a big difference. The young folks knows how to work with the elderly that's working in the community. When we were advocating for housing for the elderly, low-income housing in Chinatown International District, we did it without them because we thought what we were doing was for them, and it was good for them. We didn't tell them why we were doing it. We just wanted low-income housing for them. But the younger folks, they're going in there, speaking their language and working with them culturally. And so they're aware of what they're doing, and they're doing it very good, excellent work in community organizing. So that has to happen. Also, when we talk about the mass media, if I don't see any Asian faces, I don't even watch it because they don't reflect me. Right. I spend more time watching NHK, which is a Japanese station. Here I am, Filipino, but at least I see Asian faces. And you take a look at our local stations. When they talk about BIPOC, I hate that term because it's Black, Indigenous, people of color. So where do we fit in?
Right.
Filipinos can fit in as brown people when it comes to brown and Black businesses. But what about our other Asian and Southeast Asian brothers and sisters who aren't brown or Black? So I either say we're minorities or communities of color, but I don't go into that BIPOC anymore. Doesn't make sense to me. We're left out, and because we're left out, we get attacked. And that's what's happening. People don't realize the power that we have. I was part of a Democratic legislative district meeting last night. When I said we were the largest Asian population and that 9th district was minority majority Asians, a chat back was, Frank, I don't think you people vote. Here we are. We got more than 7 or 8 state legislature, and she doesn't think we vote.
Wow.
And most of our King County council member staff has Asians on their staff. Same way with the city of Seattle, and we don't vote. We have power. In fact, in Georgia, it was pointed out by Abrams, without Asian Americans voting, 91% of them were eligible to voted. Biden wouldn't have won.
Right. And it's not just about having power, but getting the word out there that we do have power and we do have issues that are affecting us, right? I think, this whole myth of Asian Americans are all successful, all educated, all have money, right? Where the truth is there's so many of us that are living in poverty. I think in New York is like Asians are the largest group that are dealing with poverty right now. So I think that we need to get out there, like just, the kind of an overall look of the issues affecting us. And so people can better understand this group. And I think that's why the work that you're doing, Frank and Bobby, in terms of both, political and journalistic, are so important in getting the word out there. And Frank, what are you hearing? I mean, are you people living in your community? You have, your family living in Las Vegas and in Southern California. What are they telling you? I mean, are they hearing and seeing this happen to people they know? And are they, how are they feeling about all of this?
I haven't heard much from family members. What I've heard is from the people that I know that's in the community and what I've seen on social media being posted by my friends.
Yeah.
In fact, I reached
And
out
Bobby,
to
have you
Bobby's
heard?
Facebook.
Right. And Bobby, have you heard any from your own family? I mean, in terms of personally, are they fearful of what's happening, and is it affecting them personally?
They are concerned, but with also with the lockdown, they don't go out as much. If they do,
Mm.
they go out in together, not alone. Because if you notice, all these attacks are mostly they'll pick on somebody that's individual. They don't pick on the group of 2 or 3 or more. But that's the problem. It's like I think this brings up also the concern of the senior. I said what does it say? 73% of the crimes are affected. 7.3% of the crimes are committed towards the 60-year-old AAPI. So that also brings up the concern of all the generational gap too. Are they all alone by themselves? So I mean, when they're a group, they don't get bothered, but when they're alone, that's when they're in danger. So I guess we need to address that gap too on how to, as you said, keep them safe. But as family-wise or friends-wise, since we all live in major cities that have been shut down or still under a lot of restrictions, we don't go out as much. But like these, we notice all these people are just the ones that are being attacked are just doing their normal daily life, going shopping, going to a bank, or like going for a daily walk. That's why we got to figure that out too.
And that's what's been surprising to me, and maybe I'll get you guys' perspectives on this, is that is happening in cities like San Diego, San Francisco, Oakland, New York. These are all pretty diverse cities, people that you think that people are more aware of, different ethnic groups. And you would think that if it's fueled by hate, which a lot of these cases that appears to be, then, it seems surprising. Frank, what's your take on this? Are you surprised that it's happening in these places?
No, I'm not surprised at all. Even if it is a diverse community, I'm not surprised at all. Particularly with the politics involved. When they're talking about who to replace Kamala Harris, although Hispanics are the largest population in California, Asians are the second largest, blacks are saying that position belongs to us. And so when you have that kind of split politically, it also affects them as far as implicit bias concerned towards Asians. The powers that be got to realize that we have a voice, that we have power. I don't know how many times we met with King County officials, city officials in order to get what we wanted. When we wanted a community health center, we got it.
Right.
Not because the city gave it to us or King County gave it to us. It's because we organized and got it for us. Same thing with a mental health center, the Asian Counseling Referral Services. We fought for that as well. Nothing was ever given to this community. And this is one thing that always surprises us, that they don't take us seriously enough until we bang on the table. One thing that surprises them, when we come in there, they think we're a model minority. But when we bang on the table and tell them to get fucked, all of a sudden it's, what? I had a Lutheran priest reverend, who was on who was on a community college board. We were asking for an Asian to be in a administrative position. And I noticed he wasn't listening to me. But when I started saying, fuck this, fuck that, all of a sudden he started listening to me. And I told him, look, when I was talking politely, you wouldn't listen to me. Not because I'm saying, fuck this, fuck that, you're listening to me. All of a sudden he changed. All of a sudden he started listening to me. That's one thing we can use as a model minority, is to act civil. But then when they try to mess with us and tell us lies, and then we just tell them to go get fucked. Then they'll listen to us.
Definitely a lot of strong emotions coming from many groups, obviously, that felt like they haven't been heard and represented. And, President Biden signed a memorandum pledging to combat this anti-Asian and Pacific Islander discrimination. Do you feel like that's enough? Like, Bobby, when you hear something like that President Biden is speaking out, do you feel like that's a good starting point, or there needs to be more to kind of change the hearts and minds of people in this country?
It is a good start, but after 4 years of rhetoric and especially of the last year and a half of the China virus, I think the sad part is, yes, we're noticing it right now, but what happens after 2 or 3 months when, let's say, quote unquote, the numbers go down or it's not as prevalent? People will just go back to their normal lives. Do you think all these people volunteering to escort the elderly or so, are they still going to do that? I mean, it's like, the sad part is some of these people are just doing it to be on a hashtag because, like, the hashtag stop AAPI hate, and then also remember Vincent Chin. I mean, it's good for right now, but you said it earlier. How do we keep this going? How do we keep letting people know that it's still happening, and then we have to stay proactive instead of just being the topic of the moment? We have to do this right now, just for right now, and then we got to keep the momentum going of, hey, as Frank said earlier, if you don't make a noise, they won't listen to you, because, like, we'll just end up being disappearing and in the background until in the 2022 midterms is coming up, and then in 2024, that's when AAPI, how big they are. But during those times in between the elections, where are we? They don't look at us. They don't call upon us. We need to make sure that we're there all the time. That's why I like what Frank's saying. Hey, being proactive all the time, not just during political season.
Yeah, no, and it's great that we're having this conversation now and hearing from both you and from Frank, who I know are very passionate about this issue, and you speak out on this on a regular basis, which I appreciate. And I think, with so many Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders now part of our fabrics of this country, both in Washington State and in California, in Nevada, huge population of Asian Americans. But if we're not being that active part or in that role that's making a difference, then it's not going to make a difference. Frank, any last word from you just on this issue, what you want to say about how we should approach this moving forward, and to end this kind of disturbing, kind of senseless violence that's happening out there towards Asian Americans?
Well, I do have to agree that programs like yours do contribute to bringing awareness to people in our community of what's happening. And I'm glad to hear that a person like Bobby's involved with the with the mass media. But we have to always be vigilant, no matter who's president. Even this president hasn't done enough other than to issue an executive order, but we see no one in his cabinet that reflects us. So how serious is he when it comes to combating racism towards Asians?
Yeah, and Bobby,
so I do want to thank you for having me.
Thank you, Frank, and I appreciate all your work that you've been doing for so many decades, and I'm sure the people in the Pacific Northwest appreciate your work as well. And Bobby, any last word from you and what you want to put out there? I know I hear your post. I see your posts every day. Getting the stories out there, and I think that's great to see.
Yeah, to me I think this should start a conversation between the younger generation of AAPIs with the older generation AAPIs. Hey, if it should, I think there's that generational gap that it's prevalent, but now we're seeing that, because the sad part is I don't know who do those people have to talk to, those older. I think with the ACDC is a great organization here locally. That's why maybe if we can have, it's unfortunate we can't do it now because of all this shutdowns and all the restrictions, but I think we need to start bringing in those older AAPIs and the younger AAPIs. Let's say the ones that were born here and the ones that weren't born here. So we got to understand how they are, because a lot of these older AAPIs are still independent. That's why you see they're all alone by themselves. They're still going out because they hate to ask the younger, say, hey, can you do this for me? Can you get something for me? So they like doing stuff on their own because they still want to feel like they're adults, like they're still free. Yeah. We got to open up a conversation too amongst ourselves within the AAPI community.
And I hope this is a great starting point. And I think what Frank said about bringing this in different languages, to different communities, for people to understand that this is not just one Asian American, right? We come from different parts of the world. We're immigrants from different parts of the world. So I think it's important that ACDC is really good about that, offering their services and programs in many different languages. And I think that should be part of the conversation here too. So thank you again, Frank Irigon, joining us from the Seattle area, and Bobby from the Asian Journal right here in Las Vegas. Thank you for joining us on this conversation. We hope you continue and share this conversation with your friends and family, and we'll hope to see this disturbing trend come to an end, hopefully very soon. Thank you so much, and we'll see you the next time on the next episode of Education.
Okay, Bobby. Patranya,
Take care. Pleasure meeting you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.